Imagine you wake up in the dark 40,000 years ago, and there is a pulse in your jaw. Not a sharp pain. Not yet. Just a warm, insistent throb on the lower left side, keeping time with your heartbeat. You push your tongue against the tooth, and it moves. Barely. Just enough. You have been feeling this for weeks. First it was cold water. Then it was chewing. Then it was cold air. Now it is everything, all the time. And it is worse when you lie down. So you sit up. That helps a little. The fire has burned down to embers, and everyone else is asleep. You run your tongue along the gum above the tooth, and you find the real shape of the problem. A soft swelling, tight and round, like a berry about to split. The whole side of your face feels thick and heavy. Your ear aches. Your neck has gone stiff. And here is the thing. There is no dentist. There is no drill, no injection, no antibiotic, no clinic that opens at 9 in the morning. There is nobody anywhere on earth who can take this tooth out cleanly. There is you. There is a fire. And there is whatever the people around you happen to know. And you still have to eat tomorrow. Not soup. Not soft food. Dried meat. And roots that have to be crushed between your back teeth, with a jaw that already flinches when the wind touches it. If that swelling keeps growing, it will find a way out. Through the bone. Into the soft tissue of your face, or down into your throat, or upward toward your eye. People died of this. Not dramatically. Quietly, over about a week, with a fever. You are not having a bad night. You are in a slow race between your immune system and a hole in a tooth. For most of human history, keeping your teeth was not hygiene. It was infrastructure. Your teeth were your knife, your clamp, your grindstone, your spare hand, and the only guarantee that food would ever become energy. Lose them, and you did not simply look different. You starved slowly, surrounded by food. And what ancient humans did about that is probably a better origin story for medicine than anything written on a temple wall. Think about what your teeth cost you today. 2 minutes in the morning, 2 at night. A tube of mint paste, a plastic brush you replace when the bristles splay out, and a spool of waxed floss you feel vaguely guilty about. Once or twice a year, a stranger in gloves scrapes at your enamel with a small steel hook, tells you to floss more, and you say that you will. That is the whole defense. 4 minutes a day, and an appointment you are allowed to reschedule. And it works so well that most people alive right now will never once feel what a serious tooth infection actually does to a human body. But for a person 50,000 years ago, that same mouth was a permanent open wound in the middle of the skull, and it could end them in 3 separate ways. The first one is wear. Ancient food was abrasive in a way modern food simply is not. Grit from grinding stones, sand blown into drying meat, and phytoliths, which are microscopic bodies of silica grown inside plant tissue. Essentially glass. So Paleolithic molars usually do not rot. They grind flat. Many adults had worn straight through the enamel on their back teeth by their 30s, leaving wide exposed patches of the softer dentine underneath, and once that wear reaches the pulp chamber at the center of the tooth, the nerve and the blood supply are open to the outside world. The second one is infection. Once bacteria reach that pulp, the body walls the problem off and builds an abscess at the root. The skull from Broken Hill in Zambia, found by miners in 1921, and now dated to roughly 300,000 years old, has at least 10 teeth with cavities and clear abscess damage in the jaw. It is one of the oldest severe dental cases known in the whole human lineage, and it belonged to someone who lived with it. And the third one, maybe the worst, is arithmetic. Molars are grinding machinery. Without them, you cannot break down tough plants or dried meat, so the calories you swallow stop converting. Your energy falls. Your immune function falls with it. A forager with no working back teeth becomes a person whose food has to be softened by somebody else. So bad teeth did not just make life uncomfortable. They turned a private, invisible problem into a group problem, which is exactly why the archaeology of teeth is so full of evidence that people looked after each other. Now, the single most important object in this entire story is not a drill or a medicine. It is a stick. And here is the counterintuitive part. Cleaning your teeth and treating a diseased tooth are not the same skill at all. They are separated by more than 1,000,000 years. Humans were cleaning between their teeth long before anyone understood what was rotting them. At Sima del Elefante, in the Atapuerca hills of northern Spain, a fragment of jaw known as ATE 9-1, dated to roughly 1.2 million years ago, carries a groove worn into the side of a tooth where it meets its neighbor. Archaeologists call these interproximal grooves, and they show up again and again across the human record. They are made by dragging something fibrous through the same gap, over and over, for years. That is a toothpick, used by a species that would not invent the bow for another 1,000,000 years. And the habit was not random. At Cova Foradà near Valencia in Spain, researchers led by Marina Lozano published a study in 2013 describing a Neanderthal jaw, where the toothpick grooves cluster on exactly the teeth with the worst gum disease. The picking follows the pain. Somebody worked at the sore side of their own mouth, deliberately, because pressing something into an inflamed gum pocket releases the pressure and it feels better. The materials were whatever the landscape offered. Stiff grass stems, split twigs, bone splinters, fibers of plant bark, folded and drawn through the gap like floss. And then there is the object you can actually picture. In 2019, a team including Hannah Schroeder published the complete human genome of a girl recovered from a lump of chewed birch bark pitch at Siltham in Denmark, about 5,700 years old. Her teeth marks are still in it. Older chewed lumps come from Husby in Sweden, around 10,000 years old, with the tooth impressions of teenagers pressed into the surface. Birch pitch is made by heating bark until it sweats a black tar, and people chewed it to soften it before using it as glue. But birch tar is loaded with betulin and antibacterial terpenes, so chewing it as a habit sounds like folk magic and is actually straightforward chemistry. The stuff you soften with your mouth happens to fight the bacteria in your mouth. Alright, so you can clean between your teeth, but cleaning does nothing once the decay is already inside. So what do you do then? You start cutting. Start with what is ordinary. Those interproximal grooves turn up on Homo erectus, on Neanderthals, and on early modern humans across 3 continents. This behavior is not a European invention. Then look at what people were eating. The hardened plaque on ancient teeth, called dental calculus, traps starch grains, plant fibers, and pollen, and it survives for tens of thousands of years. It is the single richest archive we have of prehistoric diet, and it is preserved by the exact process your dentist scrapes away. At Grotte de Pigeons at Taferalt in Morocco, a team led by Louise Humphrey published a study in 2014 on hunter-gatherers who lived roughly 15,000 years ago and ate enormous quantities of wild acorns and pine nuts. 51.2% of their teeth were affected by cavities. That is close to a modern industrial rate, in people who had never seen a grain of refined sugar, and it happened because sticky starch behaves in the mouth almost exactly the way sugar does. At Riparo Villabruna in northern Italy, a molar dated to about 14,000 years ago has a cavity whose walls were scraped and enlarged with a small pointed flint tool. Gregorio Auxilia and his colleagues described it in 2015. Someone held that tool and worked inside another living person's tooth. A little later, at Riparo Fredian, also in Italy, and about 13,000 years old, 2 front teeth were drilled out and then packed with bitumen mixed with plant fibers and hair. That is not just cleaning. That is a filling. 9,000 years ago at Mehrgarh in Pakistan, 11 molars in 9 adults were drilled with fine flint points, almost certainly mounted in a bow drill of the kind already used for making beads. Alfredo Capa and colleagues published it in Nature in 2006. The holes are neat, they are concentric, and several of them show wear afterwards, which means the patient kept chewing on that tooth. The patient lived. And then there is the one that feels different. At Launch in Slovenia, a cracked canine roughly 6,500 years old was sealed with beeswax, poured in while it was warm. Federico Bernardini's team published it in 2012. Beeswax does not cure anything. It does not stop decay. All it does is cover an exposed surface so that air and cold stop hurting. Somebody warmed a piece of wax to make somebody else comfortable. But here is where the story takes a turn that nobody expects. At El Cedron in northern Spain, a cave holding the remains of a group of Neanderthals from around 48,000 years ago, researchers sequenced the DNA locked inside their dental calculus. Laura Weyrich and her colleagues published the results in Nature in 2017. One young male had a dental abscess visible in his jaw and an intestinal parasite in his gut. His calculus contained poplar, which carries salicylic acid, the natural compound aspirin is built from. It also contained DNA from Penicillium mold. Now think about what that combination is. A painkiller and a mold that makes an antibiotic in the mouth of the one individual in the group who is sick. And here is the detail that recontextualizes everything. Poplar bark has almost no calories, and it tastes bitter. Nobody eats it by accident, and nobody eats it twice unless something about it works. Now, we cannot prove this man knew what he was doing. He may have eaten moldy vegetation for reasons that had nothing to do with his jaw, and one individual is not a clinical trial. But the logic holds together. The plant with the painkiller in it turns up in the mouth of the person in pain, and not, so far, in the mouths of the healthy ones. You can decide for yourself how much weight that carries. And it points at something larger than dentistry. Toothache might have helped build the idea of medicine itself, because a toothache has a particular shape that almost no other injury has. It is invisible from the outside. It lasts for weeks. It does not heal on its own. And the person suffering cannot fix it, because they cannot see into their own mouth. Treating it requires somebody else to look, to hold a tool steady, and to keep going while a person in pain sits still and lets them. That is not first aid. That is the beginning of a relationship between a patient and a healer. And it is still happening. Alyssa Crittenden and her colleagues have spent years documenting oral health among the Hadza of Tanzania, one of the last groups on Earth still living substantially by foraging, and published their findings in 2017. Their cavity rates track directly onto what they eat. The people eating the most wild honey and the most starchy tubers carry the most decay, and the ones eating store-bought agricultural food carry more still. It is the same trap Taffarelt fell into 15,000 years earlier, running in real time. Think of a tooth as a machine with no service history and no replacement part. You get one set at about age 6, and then you run them for 50 years on whatever the landscape gives you. Now, here's the part nobody talks about. On balance, ancient teeth were often better than yours. The first reason is sugar. For the vast majority of human history, there was almost nothing sweet and sticky to eat. And Streptococcus mutans, the main cavity bacterium, needs exactly that. Analysis of ancient dental calculus, led by Christina Adler and published in 2013, tracked the oral microbiome across the Neolithic and then the Industrial Revolution, and found it collapsing in diversity and tilting toward decay bacteria at both steps. The mouth got worse when the diet got softer. The second reason is that hard chewing is self-cleaning. Coarse, fibrous, gritty food scours the tooth surface as it passes, and plaque does not get the quiet hours it needs to build up. The third reason is jaw size. Chewing tough food during childhood drives the jaw to grow larger, which is why impacted wisdom teeth and crowded, overlapping front teeth are rare in the ancient record and ordinary in yours. Your teeth are not too big. Your jaw is too small because it never had to work. And the fourth is the strangest. Their teeth were tools. Neanderthals gripped hide in their front teeth and cut downward against it with a stone flake, and they left thousands of tiny diagonal scratches on the enamel doing it. Antonio Rosas and Almudena Estalrich showed in 2013 that the scratches slant consistently, which tells you which hand held the blade. A worn-out mouth is the fossil of a working life. So, what did ancient humans actually do to keep their teeth? They picked. They scraped. They chewed bark until it turned to tar. They drilled with flint and packed the hole with bitumen. They poured warm wax into a cracked canine so a friend could sleep. They swallowed a bitter plant that happened to hold aspirin in it. They ground their molars flat and kept going anyway. And most of it worked in the sense that mattered. Not permanently, not painlessly, but long enough. You have a mouth that has been outsourced. Someone else cleans it, someone else drills it, someone else numbs it, and the whole system is so quiet that you can go an entire lifetime without knowing what your ancestors knew constantly. That silence is new. It is maybe 200 years old, and for the other 300,000, a human being simply lived with the low background hum of their own decay and got on with the day. Every one of those people is upstream of you, and they all felt it.